Deploying guerrilla tactics, or what we now know today as asymmetric warfare, was something that truly was a component of the American Revolution.
They learned what we would think was guerrilla-style warfare. You know, you sort of hit quickly and then disappear.
American tactics were really frowned upon by the British because the Americans did adapt the tactics that were used by the Native Americans from the French and Indian War.
The first big battle, Lexington and Concord, takes place on a New England town green. And as the soldiers march back to Boston, they are marching along a dirt road lined by stone. You know, it's not the most effective strategy, wearing your bright red coat and march through the woods while some farmer's trying to shoot at you.
The Americans brought a tactic that they couldn't really cope with. They essentially took it away from the battlefield and they started guerrilla tactics.
Next time on Inside Assassin's Creed 3, the hero behind the war.
Connor is the hero of the American Revolution. He's a bit more like Dirty Harry.
Connor is the current-day Special Forces soldier. Silent, stealthy.
He's fighting for freedom, and he's fighting against tyranny.
In this 4-part series, get an inside look on the making of one of the most anticipated titles in gaming history. Inside Assassin's Creed 3.
Connor is the brand new hero in the game. He's a brand new assassin. He's half Native American, half European. We wanted to build that base conflict into his background.
Why are you here?
When he begins his journey, he has a very clear sense of what is right and what is wrong. He is forever motivated by a desire to do the right thing.
Commander, Connor.
He's fighting for freedom, and he's fighting against tyranny.
You as Connor, as the assassin, are the critical part of the American Revolution.
The way that we wanted to deal with the historical figures was for you to meet them sort of over the course of your journey in a way in which the history books wouldn't normally portray them.
Good day, gentlemen! General Putnam.
Many of the founders were very tough individuals. Many of them were the equivalent of the modern badass.
Our founding fathers were very hard, disciplined, dedicated individuals who wanted freedom, who wanted liberty, who wanted to express themselves their own way and not be controlled.
These founding fathers were comfortable with war, and they were warriors.
Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes!
Connor doesn't know much of the European ways at first, and then he gets to learn about these guys, these heroic figures. So for Washington, for instance, he sees that very strong guy, and Connor believes in him.
Connor is moving in and out of both the Revolution and the rest of the history. Whenever he sees conflict between two groups, he takes the side of the greater good.
We've been working very closely with the Mohawk consultant on values as well on language.
We are Gunyet Gahaga. Gunyet Gahaga means the people of the Flint.
Agoroteka, you're doing great.
And our language is called Gunyet Geha.
Every time that he's with his people or in his village, they speak the language, which I think is really cool.
Connor, as a Native American character, he's very familiar with Native American war clubs, with the tomahawk, with the bow.
He's got a very refined sense of hunting and tracking. He's been raised with the ability to navigate this environment.
Connor has a lot of his ancestry's strength from the Mohawks. He's strong, he's agile, he's able to run in the wood very quickly. It's really his nature, that's really his home.
We
had so many different versions of Connor, and he started off really slim, and then we bulked him up by adding fur and cloaks and all these things.
Instead of this thin, lean assassin, like, he fills out his coat. He's just a warrior in every sense.
The animation team has built over an hour of new animations just for Connor alone.
We started by looking at lots of military moves and even traditional ones of how you would fight with a tomahawk. We looked at that and we just thought it wasn't awesome enough. So we went really brutal, and it wasn't just throwing in blood.
We put a lot of time into the navigation elements, and we've completely redone our climb system. We really wanted it to be much more organic.
There's so much variety in what he can climb and how he can do it.
Connor moves are directly inspired by parkour.
Parkour is basically all about efficiency of movement, the quickest manner from point A to point B. When you see specific parkour movements, Connor doing a lazy vault or a dive roll, the movements themselves are very accurate. Connor moves in the game like I want to move in real life.
We wanted Connor to be a dual-handed specialist, so basically he's ambidextrous, he can fight with both hands.
When he lands, the ground shakes. And when he fights, you know, people are getting knocked left, right, and center. He's very brutal.
He is battle-driven. He's brutality, and he's the type of assassin who comes up and kills without question or hesitation.
The soldiers were not really able to go up against Connor. Connor's a killing machine. He's a ninja in a tank with a Wolverine in there.
Next time on Inside Assassin's Creed 3, America by Land and Sea.
You control the sea and you control the conflict.
What's new about Assassin's Creed 3? Obviously new cities with New York and Boston.
It was a gamble every year that you were out on the frontier, whether you're going to make it or not.
In this 4-part series, get an inside look on the making of one of the most anticipated titles in gaming history. This is Inside Assassin's Creed 3.
Ever since Europeans arrived in North America, they had been involved in shipping goods back and forth across the Atlantic Ocean. In order to make this economic system work, the British tried to control the goods that are going to the colonies. And it was this goods coming back and forth which made a few places on eastern North America important.
Whether it's the Boston Tea Party or the Boston Massacre. Fire! We have these big historical events that we can situate our game around. All of these events that people have a rough understanding of, but they've really never experienced.
We had to go back and get our historian to find us accurate maps from the era of what Boston and New York looked like. These are actual replicas of the cities.
If you're familiar with those cities, you should have that sort of eerie feeling of finding familiar sights.
We really wanted to push the animations and just make it look like it's a real living world.
As you walk through the crowd, you'll also see animals in the streets.
They'd have a pig, they just clip his ear in a certain way, and they'd let him go in the street. And then he'd eat garbage, and then when it was time to eat the pig, you'd go and find your pig, and you'd slaughter it and eat your pig.
We've got a lot of new ingredients that just bring a new, fresh feeling to the gameplay inside of the cities.
We have these great new stalking zones that you're going to find throughout the cities. It's a great way for you to remain hidden from your enemies and actually be able to sneak up to them so that you could assassinate.
We've got this amazing dynamic weather system in, so we can see not just the time of day passing, but also going in and seeing the same environments not just in the summer, but in the winter as well.
Even though it's a much more condensed area in the city, you actually have to be more careful.
There will be carts moving past, so as you're running along the buildings, escaping some snipers, you'll be able to just dive off into a hay cart that's driving past. You'll be able to jump out of that, free run quickly through the streets, through a building, and jump out the other side. See people inside freaking out as you run past through their kitchen.
Living on the frontier was extremely difficult. Not only did you have harsh winters, cold, freezing temperatures, in the summer you had heat, humidity, so it was a gamble every year that you were out on the frontier whether you're going to make it or not.
For AC3, the biggest difference is just having access to the frontier. So this huge wilderness area that sort of exploring your own pace.
It's a forest, the navigation in a very new environment and a very organic environment as well.
In the frontier, you'll be able to navigate through deep snow, but also snow does impact your gameplay. It will slow down you as well as your enemies.
Once we decided that we were going to build the frontier, we realized obviously we need to populate that area. So animals became a very big deal. We have over 24 different species of animals in the game. There's an entire hunting loop that you can engage in. Whenever you're building elements such as animals, you're halfway trying to be real and halfway trying to fulfill that fantasy of what people expect.
One of the great new features we have in the frontier is the new tree running. Connor being really fluid and being able to navigate through the trees. The frontier is really our new playground.
This war at sea was truly a global war and involved not only the British, but the French and the Spanish and the Dutch.
Naval engagement of that period was all about closing the distance.
Boarding is the end game. You've got to be able to close with the enemy, get alongside, then get on board to steal his ship. You want to take that ship intact if you can, because that's where you get your prize. The prize is whatever is on that ship that you want. Naval warfare was absolutely decisive to success in the American Revolution. Commerce comes by sea, at the same time invaders come by sea. You control the sea and you control the conflict.
It's a huge part of the historical period. The revolution is won pretty much at Yorktown by a blockade of ships.
You know, we can't ignore this part of the history. This is critical. This is something that we have to do. We started a whole team up just to specifically focus on the naval experience.
Naval combat has been a huge challenge. The technology of the wind, the water simulation has been a massive undertaking for the team.
Initially, we didn't even think it was feasible because it's a big moving structure.
It's a full simulation on high seas where Connor is controlling a ship, he's controlling a crew as well, so he's kind of the master and commander on the ship.
Very exciting. I mean, you are on a moving vessel that is very much part of the sea itself.
This is something that we wanted to engage in and build for the game.
That was a huge challenge that we set ourselves and actually turned out pretty good.
If you haven't played any Assassin's Creed games before, we really think this is a great point to get on board.
It is a new story, it is a new character.
This team is full of people who love making Assassin's Creed, who are delivering just an astoundingly polished and fun experience. As a creator, nothing gets better.
To be frank, it just looks great. Seeing all of this coming together at the end, it's amazing.
For new fans, really, this is about as good as it gets. It's by far the biggest and best Assassins yet.